In a quiet little town, everyone knew about Bruno, the German Shepherd. People often whispered about him in the market, on the streets, and near the park. "That dog is dangerous," they would say. "Nobody can touch him." Bruno had a strong body, sharp teeth, and eyes that seemed to look right through a person. He was very fast, very loud, and very aggressive. Every time someone walked near his house, he barked, growled, and ran after them. Children ran home when they saw him, and even adults gave a wide circle to avoid him. Bruno's reputation was well known, and no one wanted to challenge it. Sammy was a boy who lived near the edge of the town. He was 12 years old, and he had been paralyzed from the waist down after a fall when he was younger. Since then, he moved in a wheelchair. He could not run, jump, or climb like other kids. But he had something special, a heart full of courage and a mind full of curiosity. Sammy loved animals, birds, cats, or dogs. He watched them closely, noticing everything they did. But the thought of approaching Bruno made most people shiver. And even Sammy felt nervous the first time he saw the dog. One bright morning, the sun rising slowly over the rooftops, Sammy wheeled himself down the small lane that led past Bruno's house. Bruno was lying in his yard, eyes sharp, muscles tense, tail flicking slowly. When he saw Sammy, he immediately stood up. His ears were high, his body stiff, and a low growl came from deep in his chest. Sammy stopped. He could feel Bruno's power, the kind of strength that made grown men step back. But instead of turning away, Sammy smiled gently. "Hello, Bruno," Sammy said softly. "My name is Sammy. I won't hurt you." Bruno barked loudly. He ran toward the fence, teeth showing, but did not jump over it. He was warning, not attacking yet. Sammy stayed calm. He reached into his bag and took out a small treat, holding it in his hand. "See, I brought something for you," he said. He placed the treat on the ground, a little distance from the fence. Bruno sniffed, growled, but finally took the treat. Sammy's heart beat fast, not with fear, but with hope. This was the first small victory. Day by day, Sammy returned. Every morning, he wheeled to Bruno's yard. He spoke softly, sang little songs, and left treats on the ground. Bruno watched, growled sometimes, but began to wait. He stopped chasing strangers in the street for a moment. Sammy noticed small changes. The dog's eyes were not just sharp anymore. There was curiosity. The stiff muscles relaxed when Sammy came near. He could see that Bruno wanted trust, but he did not know how to accept it yet. Neighbors began to notice. "The boy is crazy," some said. "Bruno will bite him one day." But Sammy did not listen. He knew that kindness and patience could reach places fear never could. He wheeled closer each day, always careful, never sudden. He spoke to Bruno about his day, about school, about friends he wished he could play with. Sometimes he told the dog stories about faraway places he dreamed to see. Bruno listened. Slowly, he started wagging his tail. Slowly, he began to move closer to the fence when Sammy was near. One day, a little girl ran past the yard. Bruno barked and growled as usual, charging toward her. Sammy called out, "Bruno, stop!" The dog froze. Sammy wheeled closer and said, "It's okay. No one is hurting us." Bruno lowered his head, ears back, but did not move forward. Sammy's voice was calm, strong, and kind. For the first time, Bruno obeyed. Sammy smiled. He realized that even the fiercest heart could change when someone showed courage and love without fear. From that day on, a new story began to grow in the town. People whispered less about Bruno being untouchable and more about the boy who could sit calmly near him. Sammy felt proud, not because he tamed a dog, but because he understood him. And Bruno, for the first time, felt something he had never felt before: trust. Days passed, and Sammy's routine never changed. Every morning, he wheeled himself toward Bruno's yard, carrying a small bag with treats and sometimes a soft blanket. Bruno had started to recognize him from a distance. At first, the dog would watch silently, his tail moving slowly, his ears alert. But he no longer barked immediately. Sometimes, he even walked a little closer to the fence, sniffing the air as if trying to understand the boy's calm presence. Sammy noticed every little change. One morning, he found Bruno sitting by the gate, his head tilted, watching him carefully. Sammy smiled and said, "Good morning, Bruno. Did you sleep well?" The dog wagged his tail, a small, slow movement, but enough for Sammy to feel a surge of happiness. Sammy carefully reached into his bag and gave Bruno a treat. This time, the dog did not growl or snatch it quickly. He took it gently, sitting patiently as Sammy held his hand near him. Neighbors started watching from their windows and doorsteps. Many were surprised. The boy who could not walk was showing more courage than anyone they had seen before. Some even whispered to each other, "Maybe the boy is special. Maybe he can change Bruno." But Sammy did not care about the whispers. His focus was always on Bruno, understanding him, connecting with him. One afternoon, Sammy decided to try something new. He wheeled himself closer to the yard, leaving a small space between himself and the fence. He took out a soft rope toy and placed it on the ground. "Bruno, look what I have today," Sammy said gently. The dog growled at first, unsure of this new object, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. Slowly he approached and sniffed the toy. Sammy laughed softly. "Good boy, Bruno. You are brave." The dog's tail wagged a little faster this time. From that day, play became part of their routine. Sammy would roll to the yard, and Bruno would wait. Sometimes, the boy would toss the toy a short distance, and Bruno would fetch it. Other times, Sammy would just sit and talk to Bruno about his day, his school lessons, and his dreams. The dog listened, his ears moving slightly, eyes softening. Sammy realized that Bruno was learning something very important: trust and friendship. One afternoon, as Sammy spoke softly, Bruno suddenly barked and ran toward the gate. A stranger was walking too close to the yard. Sammy called out, "Bruno, stop. It's okay." Bruno froze, his growl stopping instantly. Sammy wheeled closer and held out his hand. "See, no one is hurting us," he said. Bruno looked at Sammy, then back at the stranger, and finally sat down. The neighbor watching from the window gasped. This was a moment no one had believed would happen. Bruno, the very aggressive dog, had listened to the boy. Sammy realized that the bond they were forming was special. It was not about fear or punishment, but about patience, understanding, and love. He knew he had to be careful, though. Bruno's past fear and anger could return if someone provoked him or if he felt threatened. Sammy promised himself he would always be gentle, never force him, and always respect his spaced out word about Sammy and Bruno spread in the town. Children whispered in school, telling their parents about the boy who could sit near the fiercest dog. Some adults came to watch quietly, amazed that a boy in a wheelchair had formed a connection that others could not. Sammy did not mind the attention. He only cared about Bruno, about seeing him happy and calm. One morning, Sammy wheeled himself to the yard and saw Bruno waiting at the gate, wagging his tail. Sammy felt a warmth in his heart. He spoke softly. "Good morning, Bruno. Are you ready to play?" The dog barked gently, almost like a laugh, and ran toward the rope toy. Sammy smiled, feeling a sense of joy he had never known before. For both of them, this was more than just a routine. It was the beginning of a friendship that could overcome fear, distance, and even the hardest hearts. Sammy realized that sometimes the bravest thing was not running, not fighting, but showing patience and care. Bruno was teaching him too, that even a strong, fierce heart could learn to trust. And slowly, with every day, every treat, every kind word, Bruno's world became a little brighter, a little safer, and a little more filled with friendship. Sammy and Bruno's mornings became something everyone in the neighborhood noticed. Bruno no longer barked at every passerby, and Sammy no longer feared approaching the fence. The bond between them was growing stronger. Every day, Bruno would sit by the gate, waiting patiently for Sammy to arrive. Sometimes, he even brought small sticks from the yard and dropped them near Sammy, as if asking him to play. Sammy laughed every time, reaching out to touch the dog's soft fur. He knew Bruno was slowly learning that not all humans were threats. One morning, Sammy decided to try something he had never dared before. He wheeled himself closer to Bruno's yard, leaving just a small distance between himself and the dog. He held out his hand, palm open, and spoke in a gentle voice. "Bruno, it is just me, your friend. You can trust me." Bruno sniffed the air and stepped closer. He stopped just a few feet from Sammy, growled softly at first, then slowly lowered his head. Sammy's heart raced with hope. He took a treat from his bag and placed it on the ground, inching his hand closer to Bruno. The dog took it gently, then nudged Sammy's hand with his nose, as if testing the boy's patience. Sammy smiled and stroked Bruno carefully. The German Shepherd leaned into his touch, a sign of trust that shocked even the neighbors, who were watching quietly from a distance. Sammy knew that trust was not built in a single day. He remembered all the stories his parents had told him about patience and kindness. He whispered to Bruno, "I will never hurt you. We will be friends forever." Bruno's tail wagged, faster this time, as if agreeing. Sammy laughed softly, a sound full of joy and relief. After that morning, their bond deepened even more. Sammy would talk about his life, his school, and the dreams he wished to achieve. He spoke about the trips he wanted to take, the books he wanted to read, and the games he wanted to play. Bruno listened closely, sometimes resting his head on the ground, sometimes nudging Sammy's hand with his nose. It was as if he understood every word. The boy and the dog had created a world of their own, a world where fear and anger had no place. One afternoon, Sammy decided to test Bruno's new calmness. He wheeled himself to the yard while carrying a small bowl. He rolled it a short distance, calling, "Bruno, catch it." Bruno's ears perked up, and for a moment, he seemed unsure. Then, with a burst of energy, he ran, grabbed the ball, and returned it carefully to Sammy. The boy clapped his hands, laughing. "Good boy, Bruno. You are amazing." Bruno barked happily, wagging his tail like a child proud of his achievement. As days went by, more people noticed the change. Children from the neighborhood would peek from behind fences, hoping to see Sammy and Bruno play. Adults came to watch quietly, amazed that a boy in a wheelchair could calm a dog that everyone had considered untouchable. Sammy never boasted or called attention to himself. He simply continued to show love and patience, teaching Bruno the meaning of trust through gentle actions. One evening, as the sun was setting and painting the sky orange, Sammy and Bruno sat near the yard gate. Sammy leaned forward in his wheelchair and whispered, "Bruno, one day, everyone will see how kind you are." Bruno rested his head on the ground, eyes soft, tail moving slowly. The boy knew that Bruno's fear of strangers would not disappear overnight. But he also knew that little by little, with every gentle touch, every soft word, every shared moment, the dog's heart was changing. That evening, Sammy went home with a heart full of happiness. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new chances to deepen their friendship. Bruno had already taught him something very important. Courage was not about fighting or running, but about patience, understanding, and love. Sammy realized that even a fierce, aggressive heart could change when met with kindness. And so, the boy and the dog continued their journey. Every day, every small victory, Every shared moment of calm brought them closer. Bruno was no longer just the aggressive German shepherd everyone feared. He was becoming Sammy's friend, protector, and companion. The town would soon learn that even the most untouchable hearts could be reached with courage and love. Spring arrived in the town, and the days grew warmer. Flowers bloomed along the streets, birds chirped cheerfully, and children played in the parks. Sammy loved this time of year because he could spend more time outside with Bruno. The dog had changed so much since that first day, but Sammy knew there was still more work to do. Bruno's fear of strangers could return if someone provoked him, and Sammy wanted to make sure the dog felt safe in every situation. One bright morning, Sammy wheeled himself to Bruno's yard with a small basket of treats. He had planned a new activity. "Today, we will try something fun, Bruno," he said gently. Bruno tilted his head, ears alert, and his tail wagged slowly. Sammy rolled closer and placed a small obstacle course in the yard. There were a few sticks, a low wooden plank, and a soft cloth for Bruno to step over. "We can play a game," Sammy explained. "You follow me, and I will cheer for you." Bruno looked at the obstacles carefully. At first, he hesitated, stepping back and growling softly. Sammy did not rush him. "Take your time, Bruno. I will wait," he said with a smile. The dog sniffed the ground, then slowly stepped over the first stick. Sammy clapped his hands softly, praising him. "Good boy. Yes, you can do it." Bruno's confidence grew with every step. He moved carefully over the plank, then touched the soft cloth with his paw. Sammy laughed with joy, feeling proud of his friend. While they played, a little girl from the neighborhood came closer to watch. Her name was Mina. She had heard about Sammy and Bruno and wanted to see if the stories were true. As she stepped nearer, Bruno growled softly, but Sammy quickly spoke to him. "It's okay, Bruno. She is not a threat." Bruno stopped growling, his body relaxing slightly. Mina smiled and waved at Sammy. "Hello, Sammy." "Hello, Bruno. You are amazing," she said. Sammy waved back, happy to share this moment with someone else. Bruno seemed curious about Mina, sniffing the air near her shoes. Sammy explained, "Bruno is learning to trust, just like we do with each other. You can help by being calm and kind." Mina nodded carefully, keeping her movements slow. Bruno wagged his tail slightly, and for the first time, he allowed the girl to come closer without barking. Sammy felt proud, knowing that Bruno's patience and trust were spreading beyond just their small circle. Later that afternoon, Sammy noticed something unusual. A small cat had wandered into the yard. Bruno's ears perked up and his muscles tensed. Normally, Bruno would chase any animal that entered his space, but Sammy quickly spoke. "Bruno, it is okay. The cat is not hurting us." Bruno looked at Sammy, then at the cat. Slowly he sat down and watched, his body calm. Sammy breathed a sigh of relief. Bruno had learned that not everything unfamiliar was dangerous. Neighbors continued to notice the changes. They whispered about how brave Sammy was, how patient he had become, and how even the fiercest dog could be reached with love. Some children began to come closer to watch the games. Some adults came quietly to see if Bruno would remain calm. Each day, Sammy taught Bruno new lessons, showing him that patience, kindness, and gentle guidance could overcome fear. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Sammy and Bruno rested near the gate. Sammy spoke softly. "Bruno, you have come so far. I am proud of you." Bruno rested his head on the ground, his tail moving slowly in approval. The boy knew that this journey was far from over, but he also knew that each step brought them closer. The bond between them was growing stronger, built on trust, patience, and care. That night, Sammy went home with a smile. He knew that tomorrow would bring new adventures. Perhaps a neighbor would visit, or a new animal might wander nearby. But he was ready. With Bruno by his side, Sammy felt confident. Together, they had discovered that courage was not only about facing danger, but also about showing patience, understanding, and love to those who feared the world. From that day forward, Sammy and Bruno's friendship became a story whispered across the town. Not a story of fear, but of courage, kindness, and the extraordinary bond between a boy who could not walk and a dog who had once seemed untouchable. Summer arrived in the town, and the days were long and warm. Sammy loved rolling through the streets in his wheelchair, feeling the breeze on his face. Bruno, too, seemed to enjoy the warmth, stretching in the sun and waiting for Sammy to arrive at his yard. Their bond had grown so strong that Bruno no longer barked at strangers and had even started to protect Sammy gently. The boy and the dog had become inseparable companions. One morning, Sammy had a new idea. He wanted to take Bruno for a small walk outside the yard. He had never tried it before because Bruno was too unpredictable with strangers around. But now Sammy felt ready. He prepared a soft leash and a few treats in his bag. "Bruno, today we will go on a little adventure," Sammy said softly, smiling. Bruno tilted his head and wagged his tail. The dog seemed to understand that today would be special. Sammy wheeled himself to the gate and clipped the leash gently around Bruno's neck. The dog did not pull or growl. He stood calmly as Sammy whispered, "Good boy. We will take it slow." Sammy opened the gate carefully. Bruno walked beside the wheelchair, matching his pace, occasionally looking at Sammy for approval. The neighbors who were watching from their windows were amazed. "Look at them! The boy and the dog are walking together," one woman exclaimed. They rolled slowly down the street. Bruno's ears moved with every sound, but he stayed close to Sammy, walking patiently. A few children ran past, and Bruno only watched them, wagging his tail instead of chasing. Sammy laughed quietly. "See, Bruno? You are amazing. You are brave." Bruno barked softly, as if agreeing, and walked on. This small adventure gave Sammy a feeling he had never known before: freedom. Even though he could not run or jump, he felt like he could explore the world with Bruno by his side. As they reached the small park at the edge of the town, Sammy noticed a group of neighborhood kids playing soccer. One of the boys kicked the ball too close to Bruno. Bruno barked, his instincts alert, but Sammy quickly said, "It's okay. Bruno, they are just playing." Bruno paused, looked at Sammy, and then sat down calmly. The kids were surprised and stopped their game for a moment. "Wow, that dog listens to the boy," one of them said. Sammy smiled, proud of his friend. In the park, Sammy and Bruno played with a small ball. Sammy rolled the ball gently, and Bruno fetched it carefully. They repeated the game many times, each time Bruno bringing the ball back without any roughness. People passing by stopped to watch. Some children asked Sammy if they could pet Bruno. Sammy smiled and said, "Yes, but slowly." Bruno is learning to trust everyone. One by one, the kids came closer, and Bruno allowed them to touch him, his tail wagging. Sammy realized that the lessons of trust and patience he had taught Bruno were now spreading to others. After a while, Sammy and Bruno rested under a big tree. Sammy opened his bag and gave Bruno a treat. "Good boy," he said. "You are not just my friend. You are everyone's friend now." Bruno rested his head gently on Sammy's lap, a sign of complete trust. The boy felt happiness flow through him. For years, he had watched the world from a distance, feeling limited by his wheelchair. But now, with Bruno beside him, he felt strong, brave, and connected to life in a way he had never imagined. As the sun began to set, Sammy wheeled Bruno back toward the yard. The adventure had been small, but it was filled with courage and trust. Sammy knew that life would always have challenges, but he also knew that with patience, understanding, and love, even the fiercest hearts could change. Bruno had taught him that, and Sammy had taught Bruno. Together, they had created a bond that could face anything. When they reached home, Sammy whispered softly, "Good job today. Bruno, you are amazing." Bruno wagged his tail and rested near Sammy's wheelchair, tired but happy. For both of them, this day had shown that courage was not always about running fast or being strong. Sometimes courage was about patience, kindness, and learning to trust. And in that summer evening, Sammy and Bruno felt stronger than ever, ready for whatever adventure came next. One early morning, Sammy woke to the sound of birds chirping and sunlight filling his room. Today felt different. There was a quiet excitement in the air, and Sammy sensed that Bruno would be ready for something new. He wheeled himself to the yard, carrying a small bag of treats, a ball, and his soft leash. Bruno was already waiting, tail wagging, as if he knew today would be special. Sammy had planned the longer walk. He wanted to take Bruno to the park near the river, a place neither of them had visited before. The path was quiet, but it had many new sounds, smells, and people who might walk by. Sammy took a deep breath and clipped the leash around Bruno's neck. "Today, we will explore a little further, Bruno. Are you ready?" he asked gently. Bruno barked softly, nudging Sammy's hand, showing his excitement and trust. As they moved down the street, Sammy noticed that Bruno's steps were more confident than before. The dog no longer hesitated near strangers or noises. They passed a group of workers carrying tools and talking loudly. Bruno stopped and looked at them, ears forward, ready to react. Sammy gently said, "Bruno, it's okay. They are not a threat." Bruno paused, then lowered his head and walked calmly beside Sammy. Each step was a small victory, and Sammy's heart swelled with pride. When they reached the river park, Sammy saw children feeding ducks, a woman jogging, and a man playing with his dog. Bruno's instincts made him alert, but Sammy stayed calm. "Bruno, watch me." "Everything is fine," he whispered. Bruno's eyes shifted from the activity around him to Sammy. He sat down quietly, tail wagging slowly, waiting for Sammy's next instruction. Sammy smiled. He had taught Bruno patience, but now they were practicing it in a busy world. Sammy and Bruno moved to a quiet part of the park. Sammy rolled over the soft grass, and Bruno walked carefully beside him. He was aware of every sound, every movement, but he trusted Sammy completely. Sammy threw the ball a short distance, and Bruno fetched it carefully, returning it gently to Sammy's hands. Each throw and fetch strengthened their bond. The boy and the dog were no longer just friends. They were partners, understanding each other without words. Suddenly, a loud noise came from across the park. A bicycle had fallen, and the child riding it shouted loudly. Bruno's ears perked up, and his muscles tensed. Sammy quickly held Bruno's leash and spoke firmly but softly. "Bruno, it's okay. We are safe. Watch me." Bruno looked at Sammy, then at the child, and slowly relaxed. The dog sat down calmly, ignoring the noise. Sammy breathed a sigh of relief. This was the first real test of Bruno's trust outside their yard, and he had passed. After that, Sammy and Bruno continued their walk along the river. They watched ducks swim, felt the gentle breeze, and enjoyed the warm sunlight. Children waved at them, and Bruno wagged his tail in greeting, no longer afraid or aggressive. Sammy realized that the dog's transformation was more than just behavior. Bruno had learned to understand the world, to trust people, and to believe in friendship. Sammy smiled, knowing that they had both grown stronger together. As the day ended, Sammy and Bruno returned to their yard. Bruno was tired, but his eyes shone with happiness and calmness. Sammy wheeled himself next to the dog and whispered, "We did it, Bruno. Today was amazing. You are brave and kind." Bruno nudged Sammy gently with his nose, a silent message of love and trust. Sammy knew that every challenge they faced made their bond stronger, and every day brought new lessons in courage and friendship. That evening, Sammy sat by a window, looking out at the quiet street. Bruno rested near him, calm and peaceful. Sammy thought about how far they had come, from the first day when Bruno growled at him, to this moment of trust and companionship. He knew that the journey was not over, but he also knew that with patience, love, and courage, they could face anything together. Sammy closed his eyes and whispered softly, "Tomorrow will be another adventure, Bruno, and we will face it together." Bruno rested his head on Sammy's lap, tail moving slowly. In that quiet moment, boy and dog knew that they had built something extraordinary, a bond that could not be broken by fear, anger, or distance. One morning, Sammy woke with excitement. Today, he had planned something very special. He wanted to take Bruno to the town square, a place full of people, shops, and children playing. It would be the biggest test of trust Bruno had ever faced. Sammy carefully packed his bag with treats, a soft leash, and a small blanket. He whispered to Bruno, "Are you ready for a big adventure today, my friend?" Bruno barked softly, nudging Sammy's hand. He seemed ready, full of trust in the boy who had never given up on him. Sammy wheeled himself and led Bruno out of the yard. Bruno walked calmly beside him, glancing at every passerby but never growling or showing fear. People in the neighborhood stopped to watch. They could not believe their eyes. Bruno, the dog that had once chased everyone away, was walking calmly with the boy in the wheelchair. Children ran to the windows and waved. Some adults even took out their phones to watch the amazing sight. When they reached the town square, Sammy could see people staring. There were street vendors, children running around, and many strangers passing by. Bruno's ears perked up, and his body tensed slightly. Sammy quickly leaned toward him and whispered, "Bruno, it's okay. I am with you. We are safe." Bruno looked at Sammy and then at the people around him. Slowly, he lowered his head and walked beside Sammy without pulling on the leash. The crowd was amazed. A little boy accidentally dropped his ice cream near Bruno. Bruno stopped, sniffed the ice cream carefully, and looked at Sammy. Sammy smiled and said softly, "You don't need to take it. We are here to enjoy, not to worry." Bruno wagged his tail and walked on. People began to notice that Bruno was not just calm but gentle. The boy in the wheelchair had taught him to trust, and now everyone could see it. Sammy found a quiet spot near a fountain and let Bruno rest. Children slowly gathered around, curious but careful. Sammy spoke to them. "Bruno is my friend. He is learning to trust people. If we are calm and kind, he will be calm too." The children followed his instructions, approaching slowly and speaking gently. Bruno sniffed their hands, wagged his tail, and allowed them to pet him. Everyone watching felt a sense of wonder. A dog that had seemed untouchable was now friendly because of the boy's patience and love. After some time, a small emergency happened. A stray dog ran toward the square, barking loudly. Bruno immediately noticed it, and his muscles tensed. Sammy stayed calm. "Bruno, it's okay. We are safe. Watch me," he said firmly. Bruno looked at Sammy, then at the stray dog. He did not run or bark. Instead, he stayed close to Sammy, calm and patient. The stray dog ran away, and the crowd clapped. Sammy hugged Bruno gently. "You did amazing, Bruno. You stayed calm. I am so proud of you." The town square had changed that day. People whispered to each other about the boy and his dog. Some came closer to watch. Some spoke kindly to Sammy, and children began to understand that trust and patience could make even the most fearful hearts gentle. Sammy realized that his dream of helping Bruno had gone beyond his yard. They were now showing the town what love and courage could do. As the sun began to set, Sammy wheeled Bruno back home. The dog walked beside him, calm and happy. Sammy looked at Bruno and said softly, "Today was amazing. You have shown everyone how kind and brave you are." Bruno rested his head near Sammy's lap, tail wagging slowly. Sammy knew that their journey had not only changed Bruno, but it also touched the hearts of everyone who had seen them. That evening, Sammy sat by the window, watching the quiet street. Bruno rested at his feet, peaceful and content. Sammy whispered, "We did it, Bruno. Together, we can face anything." Bruno nudged him gently, a silent promise of loyalty and friendship. In that moment, boy and dog knew that they had built something extraordinary, a bond stronger than fear, stronger than anger, and full of love and trust. Sammy smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring new adventures. But no matter what, he and Bruno would face them together. The town would never forget the courage of a boy in a wheelchair and his very special dog. The days passed quickly, and Sammy and Bruno continued their routine with a new sense of confidence. Everyone in the town had begun to recognize them. Children waved, neighbors smiled, and even the adults who had once feared Bruno now nodded in admiration. But Sammy knew that trust and friendship were not finished lessons. Every day brought new moments to learn, new chances to strengthen their bond. One bright morning, Sammy decided to try something very special. He wanted to bring Bruno to the school playground, a place full of children, laughter, and noise. He had never done this before, but he believed Bruno was ready. Sammy packed a small bag with treats, a ball, and his soft leash. He whispered to Bruno, "Are you ready for a big day today, my friend?" Bruno barked softly, nudging Sammy's hand, ready for the adventure. As they arrived at the playground, children ran up to watch. Some shouted, excited to see the famous German Shepherd who had once been untouchable. Bruno's ears twitched at the new sounds, and his body tensed slightly. Sammy leaned toward him and said gently, "Bruno, it is okay. Watch me. We are safe." Bruno's muscles relaxed, and he walked calmly beside Sammy, tail wagging. The crowd of children watched in awe. Sammy found a quiet corner of the playground and let Bruno rest for a moment. Then, he rolled over to a small open space and tossed a ball gently. Bruno ran to fetch it, bringing it back carefully to Sammy's hands. Children laughed and clapped, amazed by the gentle, controlled way Bruno played. One by one, the kids approached slowly, speaking softly. Bruno sniffed their hands, wagged his tail, and allowed them to pet him. The sight of the once aggressive dog being calm and friendly inspired everyone. After some time, a new challenge appeared. A little boy tripped and fell near the playground, crying loudly. Bruno immediately noticed, his protective instincts rising. Sammy held the leash firmly and spoke calmly. "Bruno, it is okay. Watch me. We are safe." Bruno looked at Sammy, then at the boy. Instead of barking or running, he walked carefully toward the child, sniffed him gently, and then stepped back. Sammy approached and comforted the boy. The crowd of children and parents watched in amazement. Bruno had remained calm, following Sammy's lead, showing not only trust but understanding. As the day went on, Sammy and Bruno played with the children, shared treats, and even explored the playground together. Bruno was no longer the fierce dog everyone feared. He had learned to trust, to play gently, and to follow Sammy's guidance. Sammy realized that their friendship had become more than just a bond between boy and dog. It had become a lesson for the entire town. People were learning that patience, kindness, and love could change even the hardest hearts. By evening, the playground had emptied, and the sun was beginning to set. Sammy wheeled Bruno to a quiet spot and knelt slightly to whisper, "You were amazing today. Bruno, everyone saw how kind and brave you are. Bruno rested his head gently on Sammy's lap, eyes soft and full of trust. Sammy smiled, feeling a deep warmth in his heart. He knew that Bruno's transformation was complete, but he also understood that their journey together would continue, full of small adventures and daily lessons as they made their way home. The town seemed quieter, but the story of Sammy and Bruno echoed in every home. People talked about the boy in a wheelchair who had tamed the fiercest dog not through force, but through love. Children repeated the story at school, and neighbors spoke about courage and patience. Sammy and Bruno had become more than friends. They had become symbols of hope, trust, and the power of kindness. That night, as Sammy rested in his room and Bruno lay at his feet, the boy whispered softly, "Thank you. Bruno, you have taught me as much as I have taught you. Together, we can face anything." Bruno nudged Sammy's hand gently, a silent promise of loyalty and love. In that quiet moment, boy and dog knew that their friendship had changed not only their lives, but also the hearts of everyone who had witnessed it from that day forward. Sammy and Bruno were inseparable. They faced new days with courage, patience, and joy. The town remembered them always, not for fear or aggression, but for love, trust, and the extraordinary bond between a boy and his dog. And in every heart that had watched them grow, a lesson remained clear. Even the most untouchable spirits could be reached by kindness, courage, and care.